he's different than, your average candidate. Hey, he came out of nowhere. I said he has a great campaign manager standing over there. He came out of nowhere. What'd you start off at 1 or 2? And then I watched. I said, who is this guy? He was at 1, then he was at 3, then he was at 5, then he was at 9. Then he went up to 17. I said, let's get a little bit interesting, right? And then all of a sudden he wins a primary that nobody expected he was going to win. It's a great tribute. I mean, it's an amazing thing that he did.
And I'll just add.
Doing great already, not muted. Hello, humans. This is a quick sort of power report, rapid response thing. Donald Trump and Zohran Mamdani just met for the first time in the Oval Office in Washington, D.C. at the White House. And they had a press conference that we'll be playing a good portion of here. Now, a lot of things I want y'all to watch in this. I watched some of the press conference, some of these pieces I'll be reacting to you, at least very minimally, as we move forward here. But coming into this meeting, this Oval Office meeting, which that part was private, but then they have the press conference that is what we have public to see here. Things could have been possibly more tense. Zohran Mamdani ran his campaign on Trump-proofing New York City. He ran his campaign leveraging the lack of popularity that exists currently for ICE and the ICE raids that are happening in major cities across the country, where Donald Trump has threatened to send agents to New York City next. And then Donald Trump has also said of Zohran Mamdani that he's a communist. Either he said it himself or people around him have definitely said that he's a jihadist. Trump has threatened to deport Zohran Mamdani potentially. They've had some spats over Israel and Gaza, and the press will address many of these things. So the important things to look here are, don't try to analyze too much of the body language of Trump and Mamdani, even though I know it's tempting and I may make a comment here or there. But we truly have to analyze and look at how Trump is responding and how Zohran is responding, and if we can possibly see which one of these men are going to be budging more in their rhetoric. I think there's room for both people. I think there's room for Zohran to disappoint and impress, and there's room for Donald Trump to cool off of his rhetoric when he usually does when it comes to actually meeting someone who has to get his job done. He's going to say that Donald Trump is going to say that there's a win coming out of whatever he's talking about anyway. But what you'll definitely notice very clearly here is whatever Zohran Mamdani did in that meeting with Donald Trump, in that closed-door meeting with Donald Trump, he got Donald Trump to cool down a little bit and realize, okay, maybe this flashy sort of, maybe going against this guy isn't the greatest idea. So I think it was an absolute dog walking. I don't think Zohran completely went in there scot-free, but you know what? I'm going to let the presser speak for itself. So I'm just going to be playing some pieces here, and then we'll watch. A little silent here first, but they're setting up and they're going to ask questions here.
In common, we want this city of our very productive meeting. We have one thing in common. We want this city of ours that we love to do very well. And I wanted to congratulate the mayor. He really ran an incredible race against, a lot of smart people, starting with the early primaries against some very tough people, very smart people. And he beat them easily. And I congratulated him. And we talked about some things in very strong common, like housing and getting housing built, and food and prices, and the price of oil is coming way down. Anything I do is going to be good for New York. If I can get prices down, it's good for New York. And we've got them down, way down from last year. We have, as you know, I've been saying to a lot of people, Walmart said that Thanksgiving this year is exactly 25% less than last year. So that's good for New York, good for everybody. But I just want to congratulate.
Appreciated the time with the president. I appreciated the conversation. I look forward to working together to deliver that affordability for New Yorkers.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
just mentioning that I want to skip ahead to get to the actual pieces and questions of what's going on here.
President Trump, Stephen Nelson from the New York Post. I've got a question for you and then also one for Mayor-elect.
Sure.
For you, you referred to Mr. Mamdani as a communist. Can you describe why you feel that way? And also, will you do anything to stop him from arresting Prime Minister Netanyahu if he visits New York?
Well, we didn't discuss your second part of the question. And on your first part, I mean, he's got views that are a little out there, but who knows? I mean, we're going to see what works, or he's going to change also. We all change. I changed a lot from when I first came to office. It's now quite a while ago. It's quite a while. My first term was great. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. We're doing even better now. We're doing much better now than we did even the first term. And I can tell you some of my views have changed. And we had discussions on some things. I'm not going to discuss what they were, but that I feel very confident that he can do a very good job. I think he's going to be. I think he is going to surprise some conservative people, actually, and some very liberal people. He won't surprise them because they already like him.
And Mr. Mamdani, it sounds like you had a productive discussion, but just days ago you referred to President Trump as a despot who betrayed the country. You said you'd be his worst nightmare and accused him of having a fascist agenda. Are you planning to retract any of these remarks in order to improve your relationship?
I think both President Trump and I, we are very clear about our positions and our views. And what I really appreciate about the president is that the meeting that we had focused not on places of disagreement, which there are many, and also focused on the shared purpose that we have in serving New Yorkers. And frankly, that is something that could transform the lives of the 8.5 million people who are currently struggling under a cost of living crisis, with 1 in 4 living in poverty. And the meeting came back again and again to what it could look like to lift those New Yorkers out of struggle and start to deliver them a city that they could do more than just struggle to afford it, but actually start to live in it.
And I've been called much worse than a despot, so it's not that insulting. Maybe I think he'll change his mind after we get to working together. Yes, please.
Mr. President, from MTV Lebanon.
Good.
I would like to ask you.
So that was very reconciliatory. The New York Post commentator was, of course, trying to do a little bit of muckraking. And yeah, Zohran's a little bit too trained for it. And Donald Trump didn't want to seem to get into a fight like he did with Zelensky, even in the White House on camera like this. So that gives you a little bit of a hint of the tenor of the conversation. Yeah, they may not have broached some of the deeper subjects within each other's rhetoric, but I think they made some sort of truce here, which I think is going to be interesting to watch long term.
Question about the Middle East regarding you said that Hezbollah in Lebanon is not in a good position. And Lebanon now is the final unresolved after Gaza and Syria. Given your assessment, like what you say for the Lebanese today, it's the independent state of Lebanon. And what is your next move to push toward disarmament?
Sure. Well, we are pushing for total disarmament of Hamas and frankly everybody else. And we actually have peace in the Middle East. As you know, the King of Saudi Arabia just left yesterday. We had some great meetings, and he's made a
more like the King of Bone Saudi Arabia, if you know the Jamal Khashoggi thing. But you know, this is less the New York question, but I'll let it finish.
A contribution toward the United States of more than $1 trillion. We have now over $20 trillion coming in. No country has ever had anything like that, not even close. If you go to 2 trillion or 1 trillion, it's a lot. We have 20 or 21 trillion dollars. I think that Hezbollah has been a problem in Lebanon, big problem. We're working with Lebanon. We're working with everybody in the Middle East. That's another thing I think we have in common. We want to see peace in the Middle East. And we actually have now, for the first time, peace in the Middle East after 3,000 years. And now we're going to refine it.
That's definitely not true. You're seeing people in Gaza get attacked by Israeli Defense Forces. We had strikes in Lebanon just earlier this week. I think maybe even yesterday. Time has been very confusing for all of us, especially this year, because of Donald Trump's, moves against peace. He's bombing boats that seem to just be fishing boats with no connection to drugs or drug cartels, just off the coast of Venezuela in South America. You can't call this the peacetime president. And yeah, I could go on and on.
And I think you're going to see some very positive things happen.
There is a potential to invite the Lebanese president.
Oh, sure. Oh, I would do that. Absolutely. And if the mayor would like to be here for that meeting, because I know he feels very strongly. I think you feel very, very strongly about peace in the Middle East. I think
We desperately want it. And that's something that I shared with the president, that when I spoke to New Yorkers who had voted for the president last November on Hillside Avenue and Fordham Road, I asked them why. I heard again and again two major reasons. One was that they wanted an end to forever wars. They wanted an end to the taxpayer dollars we had funding violations of human rights, and they wanted to address the cost of living crisis. And I appreciated the chance to discuss both of those things.
you said a lot of my voters actually voted for him, and
One in 10.
And I'm okay with that.
President Trump, I hope this that as well.
I'll do that. I'll sign it. Give it to me. I'll sign it in a minute. That's pretty good.
Mr. President,
Yeah, please.
you threatened to send federal troops to New York City. You both have differences when it comes to ICE agents
Right.
in New York City. Mr. Mamdani, you called ICE a rogue government entity. I wonder how you reconcile your differences on both of those issues.
Well, I think we're going to work them out. And I think that if we have known murderers and known drug dealers and some very bad people, we want to get them out. And the mayor wants to have peace. We discussed this at great length, actually, maybe more than anything else. He wants to have a safe New York. Ultimately, a safe New York is going to be a great New York. If it's not safe, no matter how well we do with pricing and with anything else, we can talk about anything you want. If you don't have safe streets, it's not going to be a success. So we're going to work together. We're going to make sure that if there are horrible people there, we want to get them out. I think he wants to get them out, maybe more than I do. So we'll work together. We discussed it at great length. Yes, please.
Yeah, two questions, if I may. One for you, Mr. President, from BBC in a second. But first of all, to the mayor-elect. You're both from different parts of the political spectrum. You're both populist. I just wondered to what extent the president's campaign style, his technique, is inspired any part of your campaign.
Well, I actually told the president that, so much of the focus of our campaign has been on the cost of living crisis. And when we asked those New Yorkers who had voted for the president, when we saw an increase in his numbers in New York City, that came back to the same issue: cost of living, cost of living, cost of living. And they spoke about the cost of groceries, the cost of rent, the cost of Con Ed, the cost of childcare. And too often politicians are looking to lecture to New Yorkers what they should care about as opposed to listen. And when we spoke to those voters who voted for President Trump, we heard them speak about cost of living. We focused on that same cost of living. And that's where I am really looking forward to delivering for New Yorkers in partnership with the president on the affordability agenda.
And I think we have to work a little bit. We talked about Con Edison. We have to work a little bit on getting the prices because, we've gotten fuel prices way down, but it hasn't shown up in Con Edison. And we're going to have to talk to them. If we're sending them fuel at a much lower price than it was a year ago, which is true, we have to get Con Edison to start lowering their rates.
Absolutely.
And if I may, last week you talked.
So that's an interesting piece right there, because I tend to believe that most of the things that Trump says about energy prices are lies. But, I think Zohran is throwing a little bit of shade in this conversation, saying, too often politicians lecture to people about how they feel, whereas the Zohran approach was to ask New Yorkers, including people who had voted for Trump, what are their concerns? And it came back to the affordability agenda that Zohran Mamdani was talking about. But, it has kind of Trump on the defense a little bit here, because now he's saying, okay, well, I want to say, and I want to walk out here by saying energy prices are low. Whether that's true or not, maybe I want to pressure Con Edison, the power utility company in not just New York City, but I think a lot of the tri-state region. And that could be something that, tangibly delivers for New Yorkers, especially as, I don't know if you can hear my heater, but that's going off. All these lights and these barely working computers here. These are all electricity, and I'm kind of surprised by a lot of the costs that go into it, but especially and how they're rising right now and putting people in a big crunch. So this could be one of those cases where if Zohran, or like many politicians have learned, if you play to the ego and give him an opportunity to win, Trump can do a lot of things for you if you are willing to play that game to some extent. The key is to come out of that game while saving face yourself and not look like you're capitulating to the madman. So we'll see. It's very interesting here. And it's also funny, like I was mentioning earlier, because Donald Trump is the exact kind of person Zohran Mamdani was mentioning, who will lecture to voters about how they should be feeling. Trump, just after Mamdani won, said that, I don't know why we're talking about affordability. I've made everything more affordable. He cited Thanksgiving meal. It's a very selective, Walmart basket or whatever of a Thanksgiving meal. And it turns out that I think the amount of what's in that, kit or, the collection of goods is either less food overall or, different items. But, they're cherry picking a lot of data. We all know prices are increasing. We all see inflation still increasing. We all see jobs numbers that are very heavily skewed towards the restaurant industry, are very heavily skewed towards temporary work. It just doesn't show that we have like a holistically healthy economy. And so these words are now on record. We'll see how both Trump and Mamdani kind of respond to these things when the rubber meets the road.
You were pushing ahead with your plans to sue BBC for up to $5 billion. You're going to speak to Prime Minister Starmer as well. Is there any progress or any updates on those issues?
Well, we get along very well with the Prime Minister. We made a deal with UK. I like him. He's a fine person. And, I think they have some big energy problems. They've got windmills all over the place. They're going to have to start using other methods because their energy is out of control. Talking about in the UK, it's out of control. And he's got that problem. He's got a big immigration problem, as you know, and he's got a big energy problem. And we talk about it. He's a good man. Prime Minister's a good man.
You had a chance to speak this week.
I haven't spoken this week.
Mr. President, have you spoken to President Zelensky, or do you intend to meet with President Zelensky about your plan? Have you met with him?
I've spoken with their people. We have a plan. It's horrible what's happening. It's a war that should have never happened. It would have never happened if I was president, and it's a shame. And I thought they should have acted quicker. But it's a cold winter, and a lot of the you talk about utilities, but a lot of the big.
He's kind of yapping here, so I'm going to let him keep going. But this is not related to Zohran Mamdani, only other than the fact that what I mentioned earlier, that there's a big contrast between the meeting that Donald Trump is having with Mamdani right now, where it's kind of like a berating session. Mike Pence got his licks in and stuff like that, versus right now where, Trump is sitting at the desk looking up at Mamdani several times. It's, not the strongest position for the strong man here, but I think that's an interesting contrast. Let's see what he's yapping about now.
Reasonably close, but I don't want to predict. I would have said that would have been one of my early ones. I did 8 peace deals of countries, including in India, Pakistan. You could even go, in fact, they're coming here in a week or two, go to the Congo.
Okay, so still yapping, and also still very much on autopilot about all of these, wars he's ending and peace deals he's brokering. With the Russia-Ukraine piece, what's the latest right now is that Trump is once again dealing with Russia, and it's looking like he's going to be giving away some territory on Ukraine's behalf, to which Ukraine is like, oh, what? We didn't sign up for that, so I don't know. So, more pontificating from him, and it's sort of, I guess the press will take any opportunity to get to Trump when they can, but Ukraine is not an issue that Mamdani has necessarily spoken about unless it has to do with Ukrainian New Yorkers. So it's a little bit of my annoyances with the press here. And later on, they kind of talk about, Trump and Mamdani. I think maybe if anything they had in common, it's kind of a healthy hatred of the press, I think for vastly different reasons. But that was something that I think was interesting here. All right, let's either go into another question.
I want to ask the mayor-elect about a House resolution just passed overwhelmingly to condemn socialism, including with 86 Democrats, all of House Dem leadership, and the minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries, despite his endorsement of you. What's your reaction to that?
I have to be honest with you, I focused very little on resolutions. Frankly, I've been focusing.
Condemn socialism.
I understand. I think the focus is on the work at hand. I can tell you I am someone who is a democratic socialist. I've been very open about that. And I know there might be differences about ideology, but the place of agreement is the work that needs to be done to make New York City affordable. That's what I look forward to.
And I want to clarify your answer to Stephen Nelson. Mm-hmm. He asked about your comment calling the president a fascist. And your answer was, both President Trump and I have been clear about our positions and our views. Mm-hmm. Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about.
That's okay. You can just say yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
And Mr. President, I wanted to ask you also about this Ukraine plan.
Yeah.
President Zelensky said today that his country would risk either giving up a partner or giving up its dignity. There's been criticism that this deal.
You mean he doesn't like it?
It's unclear. He was sort of
Well,
pretending.
he'll have to like it. And if he doesn't like it, then, they should just keep fighting, I guess,
The suggestion that he made, though, was that if he doesn't accept it, that the U.S. would pull back its support for Ukraine. Is that
Well, at some
accurate?
point, he's going to have to accept something. He hasn't accepted. You remember right in the Oval Office not so long ago, I said, you don't have the cards. Don't forget, I inherited this war. This war never would have happened. I inherited this war. And I thought he should have made a deal a year ago, 2 years ago. The ultimate deal would have been if it never started. That would have been the good deal. That could have been done too if you had the right president, but you didn't have the right president.
Mr. President, cost of living is something that you and Mr. Mamdani seem to agree on.
Right.
Democrats have run New York City for a long time, Mr. Mamdani. Do you see Democrat policy specifically as being a problem? And I'd like that to be a question that both of you can answer in New York City.
Look, I think that there are many things in our city where we have to own the responsibility of it, things that existed long before the president was the president. And those are also part of the message of our campaign, was to take on a broken politics of the past. And I ran against a number of candidates who represented different versions of that past. And what we found time and again is that working people were left behind in the politics of our city. And what we're looking to do is put those people right back at the heart of our politics so that we don't have a situation where we're in the wealthiest city in the history of the world, and yet 1 in 5 can't even afford $2.90 for a Metro card.
Mr. President.
We had some interesting conversation, and some of his ideas really are the same ideas that I have. But a big thing on cost, the new word is affordability. Another word is just groceries. It's sort of an old-fashioned word, but it's very accurate. And they're coming down high. They were, we had, both of us, we had the highest inflation in the history of our country the last 4 years under the Biden administration. And we've got inflation down now to a normal number. It's going to go even a little bit lower than that. Katie, do you have something in it?
So that was very interesting. I think, again, you see two diverging paths where Zohran's like, yeah, I think even before Trump, you had issues with the economy and especially affordability in New York. And what Zohran did was run against different versions of that past. I think in Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams, that's very well represented, but also within his approach with democratic socialism. And you love these gotcha questions from the media, like, oh, here's something. Oh, here's something. Oh, here's something. It's very interesting how Trump was like, it's okay, just say yes, don't have to bother with it. There's a similar, I think, disdain with the media again, that I think they are maybe on the same page with, and maybe one of the first things they bond on. The other piece to that is that Trump immediately goes into blaming Biden, his groceries is another form of affordability, but no, it's groceries, it's rent, it's utilities. We were talking about electricity earlier. It's so many more things that go into the cost of living. And when you're addressing those cost of living things, you're touching up against many of Donald Trump's friends. You're touching against many of friends of the establishment that Donald Trump represents, of a billionaire class who makes money off of nickel and diming the rest of us. So, very interesting insights here. And I was looking at Fox News and their website and some right-wing media coverage. And I'll continue to do this to kind of add some color here. Because I'm trying to wonder, is Trump's angle, the more that I appear to be reconciliatory with Zohran Mamdani, the worse that looks for Zohran? Is this going to be a way to wedge the Democrats by making Zohran seem like he's too pro-Trump or something? Trump could be stupid enough to believe that. I think Mamdani's actions are going to mean much more than this. But I think Mamdani looks pretty good coming out of this interview, or coming out of this presser here, because he doesn't seem to be budging in his rhetoric and is still staying true to his talking points, which in this case for a politician like Zohran is good, because the talking points are, it's strong rhetoric even in that setting. Now, I want to see more action than rhetoric. We'll see once he takes over and actually becomes the proper mayor at the very beginning of 2026. But these are, again, just my observations. I'm going to look at some more right-wing press, as this is just other people are digesting this as well.
Mr. Mamdani often talks about New York City being covered by international law, that they follow international law. Doesn't often talk about the U.S. Constitution. What is your response to that?
Well, I don't know what you're referring to in terms of it could be covered by international law, local law. It's covered by a lot of laws, but it's covered by U.S. law. Are you referring to anything in particular?
You just said that they're a city that endorses and enforces international law. Is that at odds with?
No, I don't know. Would you want to? Do you want to respond?
Yeah, I think what I've shared with the president is our desire to not only follow the laws of our own city, laws that protect New Yorkers, but also a desire for consistency in our politics across the board. And that's something that we've talked about and something that I know many New Yorkers want.
We were ICE.
We discussed ICE and New York City, and I spoke about how the laws that we have in New York City allow for New York City government to speak to the federal administration for about 170 serious crimes. The concerns that many New Yorkers have are around the enforcement of immigration laws on New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, and most recently we're talking about a mother and her 2 children, how this has very little to do with what that is.
What we did is we discussed crime more than ICE per se. We discussed crime, and he doesn't want to see crime, and I don't want to see crime. And I have very little doubt that we're not going to get along on that issue. He wants to, and he said some things that were very interesting as to housing construction, and he wants to see houses go up. He wants to see a lot of houses created, a lot of apartments built, et cetera. And, you know, we actually, people would be shocked, but I want to see the same thing.
Mr. Montgomery, the anti-Israel protesters.
Jack?
Mr. President, I want to know one of the policies as well that Mayor-elect Mondami talked a number of times about on the campaign was shifting the tax burden for property taxes from what he called minority communities to white-based communities and putting more taxes on white people. I also noticed that in your acceptance speech, you didn't mention anything about America or Christians or white people in general. And so I didn't know if that was one of the policies that you guys had spoken about.
Zohran wants to tax white people more and tax minorities less because the IRS, that's exactly what they keep track of on your tax returns. So, Don, what do you think about that? Like, you even saw a little bit back there, like Zohran and Trump talking about, like, Zohran's like, I did not say that. And Trump's like, I get it, whatever. And they keep giving each other a little bit, they're playing a little bit of slap ass, let's be honest. And like, that's the part where if I compartmentalize it to how they both respond to these media questions that it's not about a friendly question because, you know, Trump attacks reporters all the time. In fact, he recently did that Miss Piggy thing that was just like in super poor taste. But this is just a question based on a complete lie. Donald Trump will crash out over questions that are completely valid and are based on real things that Donald Trump has said or the real ramifications of the policies of his regime. This is just like, I don't know what Chud reporter that is, but that was just like, that was some wild stuff, honestly.
We focused on affordability. We focused on the cost of living crisis. What I will say is that I am very much interested in property tax reform because what we see right now in New York City is a system that is so inequitable that it can't even stand up in court. And the president and I spoke about the importance of not only building more housing, but also making sure that regulation of housing is something that is manageable to actually get through and not the cause of yet another weight that we see in our city.
Clear, you're continuing this idea of race-based property taxes.
No, to be very clear,
That's what you said.
no, the use of the term was a description of neighborhoods, not a description of intent.
So you intend to tax the whiter neighborhoods more?
No, we intend to create a fair property tax system because we want a New York City that is not only fair and equitable, but also one that every New Yorker can afford.
This, again, I'm trying not to do too much body language here, like I said in the beginning, but Trump did a little nod there, like, hey, you got moxie, kid. I respect it. Like, when it comes to these press questions. So it's interesting, I think, this sort of like arrangement. I think if there's like some Jedi mind tricks going on, Zohran's like, hey, look at how I attack the press. Don't you like this? Don't you like doing this? And that might be where they're buddy on.
Please, go ahead.
Mr. Montani, anti-Israel protesters just targeted a synagogue in New York. Are you concerned about Jewish New Yorkers feeling welcome and safe in the city? And President Trump, you threatened to cut off federal funding to New York City. What policies would prompt you to do that? Would that be city-run grocery stores? Would it be something else?
Well, I think if we didn't get along, whether it's cut off or just make it a little bit difficult or not give as much, we want to see, I use the term, we don't want good money going after bad. We don't want that to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. I did say that, subject to what policies are being set. We had a meeting today that actually surprised me. He wants to see no crime. He wants to see housing being built. He wants to see rents coming down, all things that I agree with. Now, we may disagree how we get there. The rent coming down, I think one of the things I really gleaned very, very much today, he'd like to see him come down ideally by building a lot of additional housing.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate way. He agrees with that, and so do I. But if I read the newspapers and the stories, I don't hear that. But I heard him say it today, and I think that's a very positive step. No, I don't expect. I expect to be helping him, not hurting him. A big help, because I want New York City to be great. Look, I love New York City. It's where I come from. I spent a lot of years there. Now I'm right here. We took a big setback with the mayor that we had, named de Blasio. I thought it was a tremendous setback for the city. I think this mayor can do some things that are going to be really great.
Mr. President,
Okay, how about you? Go ahead, please.
You're a billionaire. You have a different address nowadays than you used to, but you used to call New York City home. Would you feel comfortable living in New York City under a Mamdani administration?
Yeah, I would. I really would, especially after the meeting. Absolutely.
What makes you comfortable?
We agree on a lot more than I would have thought. I think I want him to do a great job, and we'll help him do a great job. He may have different views, but in many ways, we were discussing when Bernie Sanders was out of the race, I picked up a lot of his votes, and people had no idea, because he was strong on not getting ripped off in trade and lots of the things that I've practiced and been very successful on, tariffs, a lot of things. Bernie Sanders and I agreed on much more than people thought. And when he was put out of the race, I think quite unfairly, if you want to know the truth, many of the Bernie Sanders voters voted for me. And I felt very comfortable, frankly, in seeing that and saying that. And, it just turned out to be a statistical truth. But no, I feel very comfortable. I would feel very, very comfortable being in New York. And I think much more so after the meeting. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have
So that's really amazing. I think it sort of shows how there's this media disruption field on the right wing. Because you remember the business people who were afraid, like, oh, we're going to be lining up private jets at LaGuardia. Everyone's going to be flying out to Florida because Mamdani's going to ruin the city. And all the billionaires and millionaires are going to want to leave New York and go to Florida or Austin, Texas, or Tempe, Arizona. Like, just completely unserious sort of, threats, based on things that were not true about Zohran, based on things the media had said, right-wing media had largely said about Mamdani and his policies, purposely misconstruing them to scare people like this. I think a skillful thing that Zohran might have done is compare that to Bernie Sanders and show that crossover with the sort of original populism. Again, we just have to make sure that doesn't accidentally become, okay, we'll be a little bit, someone like Zohran, will be a little bit less hard on things like fighting some of the worst parts of the Trump administration, which is also the thing that he ran on, got elected on, and got a united coalition of Democrats and Republicans to support. Curtis Sliwa, for all the things that people like progressives are like, oh, this is an interesting guy, always taking votes, and he's really hitting Cuomo and not really hitting Mamdani that much. Sliwa seemed to be totally fine with a lot of the moves that Trump was talking about with like bringing ICE into New York City and all these sort of like tougher on crime things. So that's why I was like, Sliwa is not your savior. Let's calm down with the praise of him and let's get him back to, if Zohran made him dog catcher, like literally something that involved like animal rights or things like that, that might be a better place for Sliwa to just kind of compartmentalize that. But once you get back, I say all that to say, once you get to what Zohran's actually about, these are things that transcend the failures of both the Democratic and the Republican parties, which is why a more European style of social democracy, which is really what Zohran's talking about. It's barely democratic socialism. It's social democracy from European countries that have high rates of happiness, low cost of healthcare per capita, things like that.
question for you, but a very quick one for the
Please.
mayor. Why did you fly here? Aren't trains greener?
I'll use every form of transit, and I want to make sure that they're all affordable in New York City, and that's why making buses fast and free is a centerpiece of our campaign.
Did you?
There is a bus that
Well,
goes.
but I know, but if he flew, that's a lot quicker too. You know, I mean, he's working very hard. For him to be, that's a very long drive. I'll stick up for you. You know, the plane takes you 30 minutes and driving takes you a
And
long.
Mr. President, I was wondering if you could clear up some confusion around a Washington Post report. There was this explosive report that the Coast Guard is no longer going to characterize swastikas and nooses as hate symbols. DHS called that a lie and fake news. Can you clear up?
I don't know anything about it. When was this written?
I think yesterday.
Well, look, the Coast Guard's an incredible group of people. I know them very well. We just ordered a lot of new Coast Guard cutters, beautiful, the most magnificent ship. They look like yachts with lots of guns on them. So I don't know. I haven't seen any report like that, but certainly we want them to remain a great force, and they are.
Mr. President, and you did a piece in all the 9 months
Yes.
around the world. I would like to ask Mr. Mamdani, you've accused the U.S. government of committing genocide in Gaza while President Trump was working on peace. Why that?
I've spoken about the Israeli government committing genocide, and I've spoken about our government funding it. And I shared with the president in our meeting about the concern that many New Yorkers have of wanting their tax dollars to go towards the benefit of New Yorkers and their ability to afford basic dignity. And what we see right now is we're in the 9th consecutive year of more than 100,000 school children being homeless in our city. And there's a desperate need not only for the following of human rights, but also the following through on the promises we've made New Yorkers. And I appreciated the meeting we had and the work that we can do.
Do you agree that President Trump did?
And this is not to give, and actually, I'm going to let this continue out because this is a good back and forth. This is one of my favorite parts of the whole thing.
Do a peace and work hard to make the peace, because he worked hard to do the peace in the Middle East and everywhere. But do you agree with that?
I appreciate all efforts towards peace, and I shared with President Trump that when I spoke to Trump voters on Hillside Avenue, including one of whom was a pharmacist that spoke about how President Trump's father actually went to that pharmacy not too far from Jamaica Estates, that people were tired of seeing our tax dollars fund endless wars. And I also believe that we have to follow through on the international human rights. And I know that still today, those are being violated, and that continues to be work that has to be done no matter where we're speaking of.
Mr.
Mr.
President,
President, thank you, Mr. President. Do you view the mayor-elect as the true leader of the Democrat Party? And do you think Leader Schumer and Leader Jeffries, have to follow his lead?
Well, look, I hope they have great leaders. This is a man that right now I think is focused in New York City. I really think he has a chance to do a great job. We're going to help him, but I really think he has a chance to do a great job. But I'll let you answer that. You consider yourself the leader of the Democrats. I think it's more appropriate for him.
I consider myself the next mayor of New York City, and I keep my horizons firmly on New York City. And I appreciate the meeting with the president, which focused again on the 5 boroughs and whether New Yorkers could afford to live there.
By the way, being the mayor of New York City is a big deal.
Absolutely.
I always said, one of the things I would have loved to be someday is the mayor of New York City. Being the mayor of New York, and
Yo, we all dodged a bullet there, man.
especially now, because I think you're at really a turning point, one way or the other. It can go great, or it can go in a different direction. And I think you really have a chance to make it great. I appreciate what you're saying.
Mr. President, you say you love New York City. Mr. Mamdani, does New York City love President Trump?
New York City loves a future that is affordable. And I can tell you that there were more New Yorkers who voted for President Trump in the most recent presidential election because of that focus on cost of living. And I'm looking forward to working together to deliver on that affordability agenda.
I got a lot of votes. One more. Go ahead. 1 or 2 more. Go ahead. I tell you, the press has eaten this thing up. I've had a lot of meetings with the heads of major countries. Nobody cared. This meeting that you people have gone crazy. Outside you have hundreds of people waiting. This is just a small little group. For some reason, the press has found this to be a very interesting meeting. The biggest people in the world, they come over from countries nobody cares, but they did care about this meeting, and it was a great meeting. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. President, I was going to ask you exactly that. Why do you think there's so much more, so much excitement around this thing in some form?
Because I think he's different. All right, I think he's different, and that can be in a very positive way. But I think he's different than, your typical guy runs, wins, becomes mayor maybe, and nothing exciting. Because he has a chance to really do something great for New York. New York is at a very critical point, and he does need the help of the federal government to really succeed. And we're going to be helping him. But he's different than, your average candidate. He came out of nowhere. I said, he has a great campaign manager standing over there. He came out of nowhere. What'd you start off at 1 or 2? And then I watched. I said, who is this guy? He was at 1, then he was at 3, then he was at 5, then he was at 9. Then he went up to 17. I said, let's get a little bit interesting, right? And then all of a sudden he wins a primary that nobody expected he was going to win. It's a great tribute. I mean, it's an amazing thing that he did.
And I'll just add one thing to what the president said. Is one thing I also appreciated is in our meeting to appreciate a portrait of FDR and the incredible work that was done with the New Deal, and also in thinking about what it can look like when the federal government and New York City government work together to deliver on affordability. It can be transformative.
We have a great portrait of FDR that I found in the vaults that was missing for years. I found it and I put it up.
I just love the idea of Donald Trump, like with one of those spelunking hats on with a little light on. Let's open the Disney vault and let's see what's inside. Ooh, it's a photo of FDR. Like, I think there was a lot of, because, I think what you give Trump is kind of what you get. I think there was a lot of flattery that Zohran did, which is usually how you talk to Trump behind the scenes to get what you really, really want. And then, Trump returns the favor with flattery and saying, oh, he's so great. Oh, we found this photo of FDR. Oh, he loves the New Deal. So we took a photo together and I did that. I made that possible. Aren't I so great? Aren't I reaching across the aisle? Aren't I so presidential? For all those people who are going to be like, oh, this is the moment that Donald Trump became president and he started negotiating. This is how he's always been. Lest we forget that Dick Cheney's funeral was just this past week, and Democrats and Republicans and former presidents and former vice presidents were there, and Donald Trump was explicitly not invited. This man's an outcast in politics, and for some, I might think that's a good thing. I don't think you want to be friends with Dick Cheney. I think Donald Trump's worse. Like, Donald Trump might be getting worse than Dick Cheney pretty rapidly here, especially with the ICE raids. But I get the feeling that behind the scenes was a lot of flattery, but and maybe some camaraderie over some of this like press moments. But what I'm pleased to not be seeing from here is the capitulation that we're hoping we wouldn't get from Zohran.
Democrat, to the best of my knowledge, he's a Democrat. And when the mayor
talking about FDR still,
he said, "Sir, do you mind if I have a picture taken by that portrait?" It's an amazing portrait. I hope the picture comes out good. But it's an amazing portrait in the cabinet room. So he's a big fan of the New Deal, I guess, and of FDR. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said that you both spoke about crime.
Yeah.
There are many police officers set to come off the rolls at the end of this year in New York City. Are you going to allow those police to be replaced with police officers, actual cops? And are you going to require that happens? Would there be some consequence?
Well, I hope it happens, but again, that's going to be ultimately the mayor's decision.
What's your answer?
Is that I look forward to delivering public safety with the NYPD, and I've said over the course of our campaign that we have the number of police officers today. They are the ones that's budgeted about 35,000 headcount. And I think the key thing is that we have to make it easier for police to focus on police work, not ask them to respond to 200,000 mental health calls a year.
So is that a reduction from what you're at right now? Or are you committing to maintaining the same level of cops?
I've committed over the course of the campaign to maintain the 35,000. That's the headcount that we had through the campaign.
And not replace them with caseworkers, social work?
No, I've said that's the headcount that we want. What we need to do is make sure they can focus on serious crime.
And he just retained a great police commissioner, I believe, right?
Yes, we did. Commissioner Fish.
If the newspapers are correct.
That one they're correct about.
He retained, I think, somebody that is she's a good friend of some of the people in my family, of Ivanka, and they say she's really good, really competent, and he just retained her, so that's a good sign.
That again, that little dig of, that's one thing the newspapers are right about. There's a slightly different world where Zohran Mamdani is like been mayor and he's like smacking New York Post reporters around rhetorically saying, "You're fake news, you're fake news, you're fake news." I could totally see it. But yeah, the entire time Zohran Mamdani said, kind of controversially to some people within DSA, but I think there are realities to being the mayor of New York City. And one of those is keeping a decent relationship with NYPD, because we saw what happened when Bill de Blasio tried to buck that tide, especially during the Black Lives Matter protest, and NYPD arrested the mayor's daughter for funsies. So yeah, and also Zohran has said we're going to keep to that point. Zohran has said we're going to keep the amount of NYPD officers at about the same amount, but we're going to add social care workers. And he's framing it by saying we can have the mental health experts deal with mental health crises, and then we can have cops on the beat to deal with robberies, burglaries, violent crimes, the more like complicated sort of things that you see within New York City, detective work for investigations, econometric forensic analysis, which is a fancy word for saying investigating crimes have to do with lots of money changing hands or money laundering or things like that go on in a big city full of a lot of corrupt organizations that kind of run in the underbelly and have tendrils and tentacles throughout all parts of power within the city. It's a very interesting thing. Trump knows about it very well. Eric Adams knows about it very well. Cuomo knows about it very well. And hopefully Zohran does too, because I think that's the thing that's most likely to blindside him with all of his hopes here. But let's round this out.
Are there still topics that you see the two disagreeing on in the future? And do you think you'll have more meetings like this?
There will be topics that we disagree on. I think we'll probably come to a conclusion, and ultimately he'll convince me or I'll convince him. It's for the good of New York. Ultimately, it's for the good of New York. I don't care about affiliations or parties or anything else. I want to see if this city could be unbelievable, if he could be a spectacular success, I'd be very happy.
Do you think you guys will meet more in the future too?
Sue?
Do you think you'll meet again in the future, throughout the administration?
I think we will. I hope we do. I enjoyed the meeting. We had a great meeting. Please.
Mr. President, Republican Elise Stefanik has campaigned multiple times by calling Zohran Mamdani a jihadist. Do you think you're standing next to a jihadist right now in the Oval Office?
No, I don't, but she's out there campaigning, and you say things sometimes in a campaign.
Isn't that sort of
She's a very capable person, but you really have to ask her about that. But I don't particularly. I think I met with a man who's a very rational person. I met with a man who really wants to see New York be great again. And I can say again, because New York was great. When I came down to Washington initially, the city was so hot. It was doing great. We were having some telltale signs of problems. We had a mayor that was not doing a great job, but still, it was moving along. And it went bad. It really went, pretty bad. And I think it's been at lower points, but it went pretty bad. I think he can bring it back. Now, the question is, will he bring it back all the way? Will he bring it back greater than ever before, which is, I guarantee, that's his wish. I think he wants to make it greater than ever before. And if he can, we'll be out there cheering. I'll be cheering for him. Okay? Thank you very much, everybody.
You chose not to answer the question about the city hall.
Thank you very much.
Oh, no, I care very deeply about Jewish safety, and I look forward to rooting out anti-Semitism across the 5 boroughs and protecting Jewish New Yorkers and every New Yorker who calls the city home.
Sorry, I got muted again. My bad. But anytime there's some sort of thing where they're looking at each other after having a fiery, tense moment with the press, that's definitely what they talked about. That's definitely what they're bonding on. I think that was a smart move. I think at the end of the day, we just need to see, is Zohran really going to be about, flattering Trump like a lot of politicians do? Or is he going to take something that's a little bit more of like a Claudia Scheinbaum approach, where maybe you're, reconciliatory and relatively peaceful in private to be business oriented and get what you want, and then save the sharp and strong rhetoric for when you're speaking externally? I think Donald Trump might, on some, again, you got Moxie Kid, I respect it level, prefer that a lot more than this sort of like back and forth without people having a conversation. I think he's very, like a lot of old boomers, like, oh, well, he won't talk to me. He won't come to me and shake my hand and treat me like I'm good. Like, once you get towards that sort of ego thing that a lot of these people have, I don't know why I went to a jank voice for that. But I think Zohran played this really well and frankly kind of dog walked Trump a little bit. Trump was looking kind of weak there, looking kind of like, oh, I don't know. They must have given him some of whatever is the stuff that is helping keep his brain working, because he seemed to be fairly sharp and, you know, wants to be in his element when he's attacking the press. And this is a big meeting for him. Trump seemed to be really happy because there are a lot of cameras and a lot of reporters there. Some who are kind of asking straightforward questions, some who are like, let's get Zohran on the anti-Semitism thing. Oh, let's try to see if we can get them to fight each other here or there. But I think both Zohran and Trump were more savvy in this case, united by their hatred of the press, and press distortion especially. I think in Zohran's case, it's a lot more real. And in Trump's case, he just hates anything that reflects him in a bad light, even if he's doing bad, shady, inhumane, terrible things. So yeah, hope y'all enjoyed this. Make sure you're liking. Please share, comment, of course. Want to continue to do more coverage like this in the future, and really need your help to do it. So thank you very much, and I'll talk to you in the next one.